Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of your favorite show, Operations Management. Today's session was supposed to be about location decisions, which is chapter 8. Before we start, let's have a look at this interesting quote from a famous poet, T.S. Eliot. We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. Interesting, huh? Something to think about, something that's related to our theme of location. So, in operations management, we often consider a location strategy, which simply is about maximizing the benefit of location to the firm. So, choosing the ideal or optimal location that helps us manage our operations more smoothly, more efficiently, and ultimately for the purpose to maximize our profit, or even better, to maximize the value we create or add to society. The picture you see at the bottom is the city where I used to live and study, the city of Rotterdam, and that's the famous Erasmus Bridge. And the river you see is the River de Maas, just as a little bit of background. And in this area, many international organizations are located. Why? Because it's one of the biggest ports of the world. It's the third biggest port of the world, and having a presence there gives you some benefits regarding transportation, logistics, and so on. The location strategy is one of the most important decisions to make for a firm, and it's increasingly becoming global in nature because the trend of globalization, international competition, the consumer preferences that are becoming more and more similar, and this decision has a huge impact on your fixed and variable costs. The decisions to establish a presence in a certain location or to relocate are made quite infrequently. That means this is not a decision that is made every day, every week, every month, or even every year. Companies or businessmen are not thinking about where should I locate my business frequently. You do this once or a couple of times, and then you have to stick to that decision because it's quite a rigorous decision. And again, the objective or the goal of this decision is to maximize the benefit of a specific location to the respective company. Sometimes a location seems to have some cost benefits, but you need to go beyond the surface, beyond some shallow analysis. You need to really do some deep analysis because sometimes some costs are hidden. So before you think or decide this is a good location because it will contribute to lower costs to my business, you have to really, really investigate whether this is actually the case. Because once you're established somewhere, of course there are a lot of sunk costs. You've made a huge investment, and it's difficult to relocate. So determining the optimal facility location is quite a good investment regarding your time and financial resources, but you need to take your time to actually decide. So don't rush into a decision. Don't just blindly follow someone else's considerations, but do your own research. You may discover some hidden costs. What kind of hidden costs? We'll come back to that in a few slides. And costs is not always the most important factor. When your firm has a strong innovation strategy, meaning it's about the creation of new products and services in new markets, even for new customers, then there are four key attributes for you to consider. The first one is high quality and specialized inputs. The second, an environment that encourages investment and local rivalry, a sophisticated local market, and the local presence of related and supporting industries. And this all has to do with the notion of open innovation. Innovation has increasingly become a collaborative game where you need to synergize between different capabilities, your own capabilities, your suppliers' capabilities, your competitors' capabilities, even, and the companies that you closely work together with. So your alliances. So it's not a one-man show or a one-company show. Innovation is a collaborative game. So carefully considering where you establish your company, if it's driven by an innovation strategy, is very important. And these four key attributes should definitely be included in this decision. So regarding location, we can consider location on different dimensions. We can have a look at the country, at the region, at the site, and so on. Let's start with the country decision. What are some of the key success factors when you choose a particular country? 6 of these are mentioned here. The first one is political risks. So maybe the required laborers are there, it's low cost, the building is inexpensive, it's cheap, but the political situation is not very stable. So that's definitely a hidden cost, or it's sometimes it's quite apparent that you also need to put in the equation. So you need to look beyond the economic variables or the business variables and also include the political risks. The second is cultural and economic issues. Is your business compatible with the specific culture that you aim to establish your business in? 3, the location of markets. The markets that you aim to target, how far, how close, or how far are they from the specific country? Does this country have the kind of talent and skills that you need for your business? Can this country supply you with the input or raw materials you need? And the 6th one, what about the exchange rates and currency risks? So how stable is the currency in this particular country? A second location dimension is the region or community decision. Some of the key success factors here, the first one, corporate desires, attractiveness of this region, the availability of labor, the cost and availability of utilities like energy, environmental regulations. Are you even allowed to establish your business there considering the products that you produce? The 6th one, the government incentives and fiscal policies. How much tax will you pay over there? Will you hardly keep anything of your hard worked revenues, or will you hand it all over to the government in this region? Proximity to raw materials and customers. And the last one, the costs for land and construction. The third dimension regarding location is the site decision. Some of the success factors here. The first one, the size of the site and the cost. The second one, the air, rail, highway and waterway systems. The third one, zoning restrictions. Fourth one, proximity of services and supplies you need. And the 5th one, the environmental impact issues. And as you can see, there's quite some overlap between the key success factors for each dimension. So what are some of the factors that affect the location decision? The first one is labor productivity. The wage is not the only cost when we have a look at the labor cost. There are many other costs, and in order to calculate the labor productivity, you need to include all of the labor costs you have. So how do you calculate this productivity? It's simply the labor costs you have per day divided by the units produced per day, which is the cost per unit. Alright? It's the labor cost per day divided by the units per day, and this gives you the cost per unit. Let's have a look at this example. It's a comparison between a site in Beirut and a site in a different location. So for Beirut, the labor cost per day is $70. At this site, 60 units are produced every day. If we divide $70 by 60 units, we have $1.17 per unit. That is our cost per unit. At the other location, the labor costs per day are considerably lower. So, you might think, wow, this is an interesting, attractive location. It's only $25 labor cost per day. However, as you can see, the number of units produced per day is also considerably lower. So, I leave you to guess where this location actually is. I don't want to step on anyone's toes, but I would like to make a joke here, but I leave that joke for when I see you in person, inshallah. Anyway, 20 units are produced over here, $25 divided by 20 units is a cost of $1.25 per unit. Another factor that affects your location decision is the exchange rate and the currency risk. So, at one period of time, the situation may be very attractive for you because of some currency benefits. But what if if your own currency drops and the currency of this particular location rises, then suddenly the costs that you incur at this location increase considerably. So you definitely also have to consider whether the currency in this specific location, the site, region, or country is stable. So there are some tangible costs. Let's have a look at the second major bullet. Some costs are tangible. These are easy to measure, such as utilities, labor, materials, and taxes. But some other costs, they are intangible, and these are less easy to quantify. And examples are education, public transportation, community, and of course the quality of life. Um, you know, although some locations may be attractive economically, if you actually go there, you live there, you don't see, anything but, the same landscape day in, day out. You only see the same rock. If you look out of your window, it's the same rock every day in, day out. No restaurants, no malls, no sceneries, no amusement parks, no entertainment, nothing. It's only the same rock that you stare at every day in, day out. I don't think your wife will have a lot of fun over there. So, the quality of life is definitely a cost that you are experiencing over there. So every day you live is a day that is reduced from your lifespan, and hence every day that you are not enjoying yourself one way or another is a cost that you are experiencing, even though you do not know how to express this in money in a very tangible or direct or easy way, right? There's also political risk, different values, different culture. So in some countries they don't really appreciate intellectual property, so anything that you may invent or come up with is suddenly something that anyone can start selling. There are many examples of such countries. We know of some in Asia, for example. And also worker attitudes, the second bullet, towards turnover, unions, absenteeism. um, some countries, I told you this before, there are strong employee rights. If your employee is sick or whatever, you need to treat them really, really carefully and with caution, because there's an entire union behind this employee. This employee is a member of a union. Any wrong move or word you may utter, and you got a lawsuit incurring considerable costs. An example of such a country is France. And also the third bullet, global cultures. Globally, cultures have different attitudes towards different, aspects of work ethos, regarding, for example, punctuality, ethical issues. Some countries it's normal to get to work an hour late, 2 hours late, and in some other countries people are more punctual. And also regarding ethical issues, what may be ethically sound in your country may be preposterous or repulsive in another country, and vice versa. Right? Two more factors: proximity to markets. So, particularly for services, where you often need human beings or professionals, because every service has some customization, some individually different factors from another delivery of the same service. So it's important that you're close to the market, close to your target customers, where you actually expect to deliver the service. Otherwise, transportation costs, to get your people to the place where the service is required is also can also incur considerable costs for you. The second one is proximity to suppliers, especially if we're talking about perishable goods, like fruits, vegetables, and so on. It's a good idea to be quite close to your suppliers, because you have a limited time to actually sell off the product, right? And for some industries, it's also a good idea to be close to your competitors. This is called clustering. Silicon Valley is an example. The Minatech cluster in France is another example. And there are many of these industry clusters where many resources are shared. They are shared natural resources, information, capital, talent, um, and this creates considerable opportunities for growth and considerable opportunities to keep costs quite low. And this is found in manufacturing, but also in service industries, and also, for example, in startup or technology startup clusters that have to do with high tech, because they are dependent on each other's research, and instead of having to travel far or only have contact by phone or email, it's a good idea to be close to each other to improve short communication lines, and in the end to have shorter production and shorter innovation cycles. So it may sound like a strange idea, to be close to your competitor, but if you have a way to actually watch what your competitor is doing, that can give you some advantages as well. Especially if you're a follower, if you're a follower, you're not the first one who came up with a certain product or invention or technology. It might be a good idea to be close to the company that's the market leader in your particular market. So there are different ways to determine which location to choose. We will discuss a few here. The first one is the factor rating method. This is a popular method because it considers a wide variety of factors that you can include in the analysis, and it's actually up to you how many factors you include, and there are steps in this method. The first step is to develop a list of relevant factors or key success factors. So when you want to choose between different locations, what according to you are the success factors or the relevant factors? The second step is to assign a weight to each factor. So how important is each factor compared to the other factors? The third is to develop a scale for each factor. What is a scale? What are the potential values? And then to score each location for each factor. So you multiply the score by weights for each factor, for each location, and then you recommend the location with the highest point score. Let's have a look at an example. In this example, we are comparing France and Denmark. And as you can see at the top of the table, we are giving them a score out of 100. So what are the key success factors we have considered here? Labor availability and attitude, people to car ratio, the per capita income, per head income, the tax structure, and the education and health. So you can see the weight over here, and of course all these weights should add up to 100%, or as you can see here, 1. So which factor has the highest weight? So which factor is most important? It's the tax structure, 0.39, about 40% of the entire range of key success factors. So how have we scored France versus Denmark? For labor availability and attitude, we have scored France higher than Denmark. For people to car ratio, we have scored Denmark higher than France. For per capita income, we have scored France higher than Denmark. The same for tax structure. And for education and health, we have scored Denmark higher than France. In the end, the total score for France is 70.4 and for Denmark 68. It's quite a close call. So I don't think the decision is completely obvious. It's a close call, but you could say that France has scored higher. So let's go for France. Let's go and have some French cheese. Let's go and wage war against the employee unions. Your business might be working only 4 months a year because your employees are on strike, but at least you can climb the Eiffel Tower and have a nice view when you reach bankruptcy. Alright, the second method of how to choose between different locations is called the locational break-even analysis. This is a method of cost volume analysis used for industrial locations. There are 3 steps. The first step is determine the fixed and variable costs for each location. Then plot the cost for each location. And then select the location for the lowest total cost for your expected production volume. This is important. So how many units do you expect to produce? That's a very important input in this method. Let's have a look how it works. So for example, you've got three cities over here, Ramtha, Alan, and Nahla. The selling price at the top, there are three locations, the selling price is $120 and the expected production is 2,000 units. Alright, so for each city the fixed costs and variable costs are given, and the total cost is the fixed cost plus the variable cost multiplied by the number of units or the volume. Alright, so the total cost is the fixed cost, and we add to that the variable cost multiplied by the number of units we produced, and this gives us the total cost. So as you can see over here, depending on the number of units produced, each city comes out having the lowest cost. So if the volume is between 0 and 1,000 units, then Ramtha has the lowest cost. If the volume is between 1,000 and 2,500 units, then Alan has the lowest cost. And if the volume is about 2,600 and more, is 2,600 or more or higher, then Nahla has the lowest cost. So again, your expected volume produced is important in deciding which location to choose in this particular approach of deciding which location. The third approach of deciding which location to choose is called the transportation model, and this finds the amounts to be shipped from several points of supply to several points of demand. So this particular, it's a mathematical technique. We will leave out the mathematics, in this particular course, but the solution will minimize total production and shipping costs. And it's a special class of linear programming. I suppose you've heard of this. I suppose you've had this in previous courses. This is a linear programming problem. Let's have a look. The worldwide distribution of Volkswagen and its parts. As you can see in this figure, at the upper right corner of the figure, there are the numbers are explained that are given in this figure. 1 means finished vehicles. 2 means vehicles for assembly. 3 means parts. And 4 means assemblies. For example, engines, suspension units, and so on. So as you can see in this figure, Volkswagen, of course, its headquarters or main production site is in Germany, and depending on the demand in each part of the world, different production units or different production outputs are shipped to each part of the world. So let's have a look. Volkswagen Asia, they are mainly getting parts. Shanghai Volkswagen in China, what are they getting? 2 and 3, they are getting vehicles for assembly and parts. Let's have a look. Is there any place in this world that is getting finished vehicles? Yes, over here. Volkswagen of Canada, as you can see in this arrow, it's getting finished vehicles, which is 1, and it's also getting parts, which is 3. Alright? When we want to discuss services, the location of establishing your service in a specific place, there are a number of different factors to consider. One of them is the purchasing power of the target area. So when you want to establish your service company somewhere, your service office, you need to think about, do the people over there, your target market, have the purchasing or buying power to actually buy your services? Is this target area the right target area for you, considering the cost for your service? The second is the service and image compatibility with the demographics of the target area. So of course your service has a certain image. Maybe it's an elite service, maybe it's a cost leadership kind of service, and is it compatible with the demographics of this target area? So if your service is mainly for for cost leadership, you're not going to establish yourself in Beverly Hills, um, and vice versa. If you're offering an elite services, you're not going to establish your service center somewhere in the projects in the ghetto. Um, you know, it may be fun for a short period of time, but some interesting events may happen that put you out of business, and maybe you'll never find your employees back again. The third one is competition in the area. How many similar service providers are there already? Is there an opportunity to actually work with them, or is the competition so fierce that the investment in an office in that particular area is not a good idea? Or you can always, of course, try to go for a flex office, flex seats in an office where you don't buy an entire building or rent it for 10 or 15 or 20 years, but actually you go to a site that is open to different companies where you can rent chairs or small offices, small units for a short period of time to minimize the risk for yourself and to offer your service as a kind of trial first before you permanently establish yourself there. The fourth one is the quality of the competition. Maybe there is some competition there, but you've got superior capabilities, superior knowledge and assets that you can easily, conquer this market. You can easily put your competitors out of business, or maybe work with them, let them, actually do the easier parts of your service where you handle the more complex or more sophisticated part. And finally, the physical qualities of the facilities and neighboring businesses. You don't want to be established in a business where there's a continuous leakage, where continuously you have to call maintenance to fix different problems in your building that have an impact on your operations, on your productivity. The construction, the facilities need to be neat, decent, so you can focus on your business instead of focusing on all kinds of secondary issues.